So, welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. I'm Harriet Frew, eating disorder therapist, here to support you in overcoming disordered eating and finding peace with food. So, today I have a guest on the show, and I am talking to Kendal Bierman, a licensed mental health counsellor and the voice behind Kendal B Therapy. So, Kendal specialises in supporting young adults struggling with disordered eating, body image, anxiety, and perfectionism, helping them cultivate a compassionate, shame-free relationship with food and their bodies. So, on the podcast today, Kendal is going to explore why smart, self aware people still get stuck in cycles of dieting or negative body image, the hidden role of anxiety, perfectionism, and self worth in eating patterns, and how intuitive eating and mindful self care can create lasting freedom around food, navigating social pressures, comparison, and shame while building body confidence, and the connection between substance abuse and disordered eating. So much value in this episode. Let's get to it. Welcome, Kendal, to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So before we dive in, Kendal, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based, the kind of work you do.
Of course. So I am based in New Jersey in the United States. I'm right outside of New York City. So I'm a licensed therapist here in the US. I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey. And as you put it so nicely, my specialties, they include eating disorders in particular, binge eating and bulimia, body image, and then anxiety, and then also alcohol and marijuana use or alcohol, marijuana, like substance abuse. So I've kind of put those three together to form my niche. And my practice right now is mostly virtual. And then a couple days a week, I'm in New York City where I offer some in-person sessions.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm wondering, are you pretty busy with the services you're offering? Are you getting lots of people that are needing that sort of support?
It has been busy, busier than I thought it would be. I'm trying to give myself one day a week to kind of handle the process notes and the admin side of running a practice, which I'm sure you understand. But yes, it has been busy, particularly with commuting into the city, but I love it. It's been really great.
Sure, yeah. No, well, amazing. Well, it's quite a long time since I've been to New York, actually, probably about like 20 years. But yeah.
Oh, really? Well, you got to come back. I'm sure it's changed a lot in the last 20 years.
Yeah, no, I bet actually. Yeah, no, I came across when I did Camp America. I worked in Connecticut on a camp many years ago.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Well, I got to come back to the UK. I haven't been there probably in like 20 years. So
Yeah,
we owe each other a trip.
definitely. Okay, let's dive in then. So, why do like smart, self-aware people get stuck in these cycles? Because I think, we kind of know about diet culture these days, don't we? Like you
Mhm.
kind of think it's we're so much more aware than we were in the past. So, why does it still happen, do you think?
Yeah, so in addition to my specialties, I do a lot of DBT, which is it's dialectical behavior therapy. And in DBT, we talk about how we have different parts of our brain. We have our logical, reasonable mind, which is very fact-based and like very objective. And then we have our emotional side, which isn't really looking at facts, but it's all about how we feel. Where we want to end up is somewhere in the middle, which is wise mind, where we're taking in fact and reason and our emotion. And I think that sometimes being very self-aware, it almost kind of goes more on the reasonable logic mind in a way. And it's like I know what I should be doing. I know what's right, yet for whatever reason, I can't get myself to do it. And it's kind of the hidden emotion, I think, that's underneath that's driving that. It's like I could know, all right, I understand that diets are maybe more likely to lead me to binge eating because I'm restricting. Yet there's some sort of voice, some emotion that's going on underneath that's like, but I shouldn't. I really shouldn't eat that thing. Or I really want to be thin, or I really want to look whatever way. So it's sort of this battle of the perfectionist, very smart person who knows what's right, knows what they should be doing, but sometimes just knowing it isn't the whole thing. And it's more nuanced, it's more complicated than that. And so you could be the smartest person in the world and still very much struggle with something like that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense actually. I really like the way that you've described that. And I guess it's very true, isn't it? I think that people generally that struggle with eating disorders, they're often very smart people and they're often real overthinkers, aren't they? And they're often as well listening to like so much content, I find as well. I don't know if you find this with your clients, but there's so much out there, isn't it, there on kind of clean eating, the right food to eat, intermittent fasting, etc., etc. So
Oh my
that almost kind
gosh.
of like feeds that narrative, doesn't it?
It's so much, and you're getting mixed messaging too, I find, right? Like for the longest, or not the longest time, but it seemed for a while there was a lot of body positivity out there, and it was, intuitive eating was on the rise, and now there's Ozempic, and I know that's controversial and whatever, you can have whatever opinion about it, but now the messaging of that is like you got to be thin, and that's it. So there's a lot of mixed messaging. There's a lot of constant messaging on what healthy eating is. And I think that's you bring a good point. You said something about clean eating that I think sometimes it's like disguised, like the diet culture can be disguised as like, well, this is healthy and this is clean. But it kind of then pushes that boundary and goes over the top to becoming unhealthy eating patterns.
Yeah, no, so true. And just quick tangent, actually, can I just ask you as well, are you finding a lot of your clients are sort of showing up in the therapy room that have been taking GLPs at all? Is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, yeah, actually a lot. It's, I think it's like controversial at this point.
Yeah,
I don't think anything is so like inherently wrong or inherently right. I think it
yeah,
depends on the person, and I think there can be a healthy way to use it, whether that's controversial or not. But yeah, I'm finding a lot of people, and I think that it can be used as a tool.
yeah.
But I think a lot of people use it as more so a crutch and it's used in an unhealthy way.
Yeah, no, I think
How about you? Have you find a lot of your clients that you work with, have you been seeing a lot of GLP-1s?
yeah, I have. And I think I share a similar view to you, really, that I believe it's a tool and it's not all right and all
Hmm.
wrong. And, I think it's really good to look at the individual, isn't it? But I have had clients turn up in the therapy room that have used the GLPs for a bit. They've then come off them and they can't maintain the new lower weight. The food noise comes back and then they end up in quite destructive places. So it's tricky, isn't it? I think it needs a lot of
Yeah.
wisdom and discernment, doesn't it, before you go down that road, and a lot of support. I think a multidisciplinary team, really.
Absolutely. I think if whenever I have a client who's wanting to start on a GLP-1, I'm like, all right, we got to get you set up with a dietitian or a nutritionist. I need to speak with your primary care to make sure you're getting enough nutrients in as well. And it does make intuitive eating harder, right? Because it's a
Yeah.
positive that the food noise is gone, but if your goal is to use it as a tool and then get off of it, what do you do when that comes back and all of a sudden your hunger and fullness cues are out of whack?
Yeah, no, it's tricky, isn't it? It's tricky. And I think it'll be so interesting to see how all of this develops down the line,
Yes.
actually, won't it? It really
Yes,
will. Yeah. Anyway, no,
that is
interesting.
true. We'll see.
We'll see. So, talk us a little bit about the hidden role of anxiety, like perfectionism and self-worth in this whole kind of pursuit of body control and food control.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's many different ways that it shows up. Maybe the more obvious one is this feeling of self-worth and anxiety and wanting to look a certain way to fit in, right? And it's not just about like, oh, I want to look a certain way just so I feel good. It's more like if I don't look a certain way, am I going to be an outcast? Am I never going to find my partner? Am I never going to fit in or get that respect that I feel that I want? And it drives this internal struggle of like, am I enough? Which is naturally going to create anxiety in anybody. And then, unfortunately, start to impact a person's behavior around eating to try to quell and ease that anxiety, to feel, okay, well, if I restrict, if I diet, then I'm not going to feel as anxious because it means that I'm closer to looking how I want to look. And then there's this other side, which is anxiety and a little OCD of more maybe where it's actually even less about body image and just more about control and feeling like, okay, I don't have control in a lot of different areas of my life. And usually this person's not really thinking in this way, it's kind of under the surface. And so food is something that they feel is easier to control, right? So I'm going to be completely clean eating and not eat after this time or intermittent fasting, like that's where I'm going to have the most control in my life because life a lot of things in life, most things, are out of our control. And that can create a lot of anxiety. I think that's where a lot of anxiety lies. This feeling of like, oh, things are out of control. But so to deal with our anxiety, we want to regain control. And so for people that struggle with food or eating disorders, the way they're trying to regain control is through their food and what they put into their body. So anxiety can show up in a few different ways. It can be about the self and how a person looks and if they're fitting in, or it could just be about this feeling like they're lacking control, and food is the easiest way to get that control back.
Sure. It makes a lot of sense. And I think just listening to what you're saying, it's really like emphasizing how these issues are often a coping strategy, aren't they? Like, I think on the surface, it can feel like, oh, it's all about, vanity or, but
Yeah,
the food, but actually it's about a lot more, isn't it? And like you sort of say as well, perhaps when people are feeling out of control, where they're feeling like they're not going to be accepted, they're not good enough, this is kind of
that's
like a,
exactly what it is. You hit the nail on the head and you put it much nicer than I did. That, yes, it is 100% a coping mechanism. And we all have different coping mechanisms, and unfortunately, some just happen to be more destructive than others, but they work for a time, and that's why you continue doing them. And I know I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but this overlap of substance use as well, because that's one of my
sure.
specialties, that's
Yeah.
also a coping mechanism. It's a way of dealing with distress, a way of dealing with anxiety. So it works in the short term, but in the long term, often creates more distress.
Sure. So say a bit more as well about substance misuse as well, because I guess there's often some overlap, isn't there? Like people that struggle with
Yeah,
eating issues may often struggle with drug use or alcohol use, or they may get, one area they may be doing better with, and then the coping is transferred to another way of coping. So you can say a bit more
that's
about
exactly.
that.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So I think in particular, when a person is in, let's say, early recovery, they're in their early days of sobriety or cutting out certain substances, there's a much higher risk for that person to start to develop a competing or a different type of coping mechanism that also isn't going to be unhealthy, whether that's binge eating or restricting. Um, and so it's hard when you let go of your one coping mechanism that's in a way been working for you for so long, you're going to try to grasp for something else. Um, and that's why, unfortunately, I find in treatment of eating disorders and substance use disorders, I have found that there isn't enough attention paid to the fact that both of those have that overlap. And so it can kind of sneakily end up where then the person is struggling with the other one. Or it turns out that maybe the person was actually struggling with both, but they weren't really aware of it because one was more pervasive or prevalent than the other one. But yes, they are both coping tools, whether a person is using food. Let's say you're binge eating, right? A person who's binge eating is using food as a coping mechanism to either quiet their mind, to not deal with distress. And a person that is drinking too much alcohol or smoking marijuana every night is also looking to quiet maybe that voice in their head or to quiet or ease that physical discomfort that they feel in their body. So they are used similarly, or they can be used similarly. And in addition to that, one can actually increase the other. Like there's, what's the term? I think drunkorexia, I think is a term I've
Sure.
heard,
Yeah.
right? So it's like this idea, well, if I'm going to be drinking later, that's a lot of calories. So let me not eat this meal right now. And then also, if I don't eat, then I can get drunk faster. And so the two can play off of each other. Or stimulants, for instance, those are appetite suppressants. So somebody might get addicted to stimulants because they were using them as a way to suppress their appetite. And now there's both issues going on with restricting food and also abusing stimulants. So there's a lot of different ways that the two can overlap. There's a lot of different ways that um, they kind of interact with one another. And it's important if you're in recovery from one or you're working toward one, just try to pay attention and recognize what your relationship is with the other, either with food or substances.
That's so helpful because I think just hearing you talk about that, I sort of think about so many clients actually that have come to me for the eating issue, because I guess that's how I tend to like promote myself, and that's how people come to me mainly
Mm,
for food. But there's often an issue with alcohol or drug use alongside.
yeah.
And I think it does sometimes get missed, doesn't it? Because I think, like you're saying as well, perhaps the person doesn't even realize that maybe the substance is a problem or how entangled it all is in the process.
Yeah, well, they think, well, this is the main problem. This is why I'm here. And that usually is the case. Like there's a list of priorities of what someone's struggling with, and there's the number one problem that you see. But as you start to, I guess, like unravel and like you start to deal with that first pressing problem, you might find other things that are underneath. But it's interesting that you see that as well. I've seen it a lot. I started off my focus with eating disorders, and then as I started seeing more clients with who were struggling with binge eating in particular, I started seeing this big overlap, and it brought me into the world of addiction as well, and working in that field.
And do you work sort of motivationally? Like, 'cause I guess like motivational interviewing, working on ambivalence around change is quite central, isn't it, with all these issues? But is that a big part of your work?
A lot, a lot. So like on my website and the way I sometimes talk about what I do, I'll say I do a lot with like sober curiosity because a lot of people, when they come to therapy, they're not like, all right, I'm ready. I'm gonna stop all my problems immediately. Like that would be really scary. So we start off with like, all right, well, you're curious about this. Let's talk about it. Like, how is this impacting your life in a negative way? But also, how has this been working for you? And can we find a better, healthier way of helping you feel these feelings that don't involve substances or binge eating? Um, so yeah, we have to deal a lot with ambivalence and the stages of change and motivational interviewing because even if someone comes in and they want to change their behavior right off the bat, like e- that's really hard to do and it's scary and that has to be addressed.
Yeah, you're so right. And I think like you're saying as well, like I guess there could be a lot of like downsides to the behavior, but also they're getting a lot from it sometimes as well, aren't they? And if you haven't got like
Yeah.
replacement healthy strategies, it's like terrifying, isn't it? To sort of like you remove that from your life.
Yeah, like all right, I'm going to take away the one thing that you've been using to help deal with this anxiety or depression, whatever, and now you just got to sit in it. Like that. I mean, and that's a skill in itself, sitting in the discomfort.
Yeah.
But it might be overwhelming at first.
Yeah, that's so true. So talk a bit
Yeah.
about intuitive eating and mindful sort of self-love and how these things can really help in healing relationship with food.
Yeah, so I mean, I love intuitive eating and it seems so simple on the surface, listen to your body. But it is a lot harder in practice because like as you said, the messaging that we get of like dieting and diet culture and meanwhile intuitive eating is like no, we completely reject the diet mentality and instead we want like you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, as long as it's mindful and you're paying attention to what your body wants and needs. And I think I mean, I don't know if most people, but it seems like this at least, we have kind of lost our way and we don't really know what our body wants and if we're very hungry or if we're very full. Um, and so intuitive eating is about trying to draw our attention back to like what our body needs. And that's hard. I think so. One thing I've found working with clients and doing intuitive eating is that people generally have an idea of when they're ravenous and when they're very full. But how about that in between area, right? That's where we want to live, when maybe my hunger is like a 5 out of 10 and my fullness is a 5 out of 10. What does that feel like? And so what I have my clients do, which was like in one of the intuitive eating practices, is like paying attention whenever they're about to eat something, like rating what their hunger level is, and then after rating what their fullness level is. So it's a lot about mindfulness and drawing our attention back to our body and what our body is feeling and wanting. And that, I think, being in tune with our body and what we need, that's where real control lies. right? Like if we're seeking
Definitely.
control over food, that's, we end up losing control. And what we really want to start to feel is like, all right, I'm eating this because I'm hungry and it satiates me and that feels good. And not like, all right, today's a cheat day, so let me eat as much of this as possible and feel guilty about it and then not eat it for another while. I don't know if that fully answered your question, but I think as we start to feel more in control of our body and we start to feel like we're giving it what we need, we'll start to build more compassion and less shame about what we're eating and what we're doing because that's it. With like binge eating or restricting, we create this cycle of shame of like, all right, I eat
Mhm.
something I shouldn't eat and now I feel shame about it. And now I'm going to restrict because I feel shame and now I feel shame that I'm restricting. So it's this vicious cycle of like binge, restrict, shame that intuitive eating is working to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense, doesn't it? And I think I really relate to what you're saying as well about so many clients either only sort of like recognizing being absolutely ravenous or like
Hmm.
really overfull and also just like not having, I think because of diet culture and all the messages we're given, just almost feeling like really wrong for like experiencing some of the like milder hunger signals or just thinking, oh no, that's craving or emotional eating, realizing
Yeah, like,
when
oh no,
actually it's
ignore
hunger.
it. Ignore it. It's you're not that hungry, or you can get away with another couple hours without eating.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm really all for intuitive eating. And do you find that would you implement sort of help your clients implement more like regular eating first before as a kind of baseline for intuitive eating, or would you go straight for the intuitive eating?
Do you mind explaining what do you mean by like regular eating?
Yeah, so I guess like just having like a sort of structure in place. Not and I don't mean like not a kind of rigid like meal plan, but like in the UK, I think we often talk about in binge eating recovery, talking about like the six eats. So having like three meals, three snacks a day, like having a sort of scaffolding framework of like balanced
Yes.
eating. Yeah.
That makes sense. So yes, I would agree with that because I think when a person's hunger and fullness cues are completely out of whack, like how are you supposed to all of a sudden be like, let me listen to my body and it'll tell me when to eat. So it takes time to kind of build that back. And as the person is doing like their normal eating, I would encourage them to pay attention though to like how hungry they're trying to like take note of how hungry they're feeling before each meal, how full they're feeling after. So starting to build that awareness while also incorporating like regular meals throughout the day.
Yeah, no, sure. No, it makes sense. Okay. And then what about like navigating like the social pressures, comparison, shame, all those things while we're like trying really hard to build this body confidence? Can you say a bit on that?
Yeah, oh man, it's hard. I mean, I think comparison is something that I think keeps people stuck for a long time. And honestly, I think a big part of healing is who you surround yourself with. And so if you're surrounded by people who are speaking out loud the things that you're struggling with internally, that's going to be very hard. And it doesn't mean you have to cut them out of your life, but maybe as you're struggling and you're working on this from, in the beginning, trying to find spaces and places and people that you feel safer around, that you're not hearing these outward thoughts, um, around like safer people, I guess I would say. Um, and also like social media, that's a big one. But like I would say if you're not willing to like cut back your time or cut back off of social media completely, at least finding people on social media you can follow who are more positive influence. Like there's a lot of body positive influencers or intuitive eating therapists or influencers that are out there that you can kind of rework your algorithm to show you. So really, it really helps to try to surround yourself by more positive media and positive influences in your life.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And I mean, there's that study, isn't there, that says we're the sum of the five people that we spend the most time with or whatever. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's so true, isn't it? Environment and the people in your life are so, so, so important. And I think, yeah, we cannot underestimate that. And sometimes you have to be quite ruthless, don't you? And I don't mean in terms of being like
yeah,
ruthless in terms of like cutting people off necessarily, but just being very intentional about where you direct your time and energy.
Yes, definitely. And that can start with paying attention to how you feel the next time you're with a group of friends, like checking in with yourself. Like, all right, am I feeling confident? Am I feeling bad about myself? Am I happy? Am I feeling anxious? Like, take note of that because our emotions give us important information.
Yeah, I know, so true. So, Kendall, do you have any sort of messages for people, like anyone that's perhaps watching this today that's feeling really stuck, but perhaps recognizing that they might need some support? What words of encouragement would you give to
Hmm.
help them start out on this journey?
Well, I mean, I would say, first of all, and I know it's a cliche, that you are not alone. This is the biggest topic, body image, um, um, our relationship with our food, our relationship with ourselves. It is so deep rooted, and it's not just about vanity, it's about how you're feeling with yourself. The other thing that I would say is that you don't have to have a full-blown disorder to reach out for help. In fact, I would say to reach out for help before that happens, just like we go to see a doctor every year for a physical before we get sick. So if you're starting to notice that you're feeling uncomfortable in your own skin or you're having uncomfortable thoughts as you're eating food, reach out, find a therapist or find a nutritionist or a dietitian, somebody who is um, you find to be a good influence that you have a good rapport with, reach out, seek help. Like you're not alone. It's, I think, very much more common than it ever used to be to speak with a therapist, um, and speak about it, really.
Yeah, it's great advice. I think it's a big message, isn't it? Just like not to suffer in silence. And because I think many people suffer for many years, don't they, on their own,
Yeah,
minimizing their issues. And the longer you suffer, it is more challenging, I think, to, then overcome these issues. I mean, I think it's never too late, is it? And I think, recovery is possible at any age, however long you have suffered. But there's definitely value in getting support earlier than later.
definitely. Absolutely. I think the earlier the better if you can.
Yeah, so true. So, Kendall, where can people find you if they want to kind of find out more about your work, or maybe if they're in your area, if they want to get in touch about a consultation?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, as I said, I'm in the US in New Jersey and New York. I have a website where you can find more information about me, or you can get in touch with me through my website. It would be www.kendalbtherapy.com. You can also find me on Instagram. It's at KendalBTherapy. But those are the two main methods of getting in touch with me.
Okay, brilliant. I should make sure that those could go in the show notes. Okay.
Great,
Um,
thank you.
okay, well, I'd just like to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and for, dispensing your wisdom. I know that the listeners are going to find this so valuable and it's just really inspiring. So yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation.